tonight, the DSA is hosting a call talking to non-socialists about ICE and immigration. The DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America, are having an organizing meeting to teach people how to talk to the non-socialists in their life about ICE and immigration.
If you want to just introduce yourselves, you can say name, where you're coming from, your chapter, pronouns if you want, and what you're hoping to get out of the training, and what do you hope you can effectively respond to. All right, and I'm also going to answer. You can effectively respond. I'm also going to answer this email from someone who can't. Okay. Okay, so who's the person who's doing this? Colin, would you mind checking this? Stacy Long's comment here.
Yeah, I'm looking into it.
All right. Hi, everyone. As we're gathering here, we're Colin, did you manage to fix our question or our issue here? We're just gonna doing this for a couple of minutes here. I'm gonna also, we're still letting folks in. Could Guy, could you, I could actually take over that letting folks in if you wanted to get us started with the community agreements and introductions.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll introduce myself first. My name's Guy Brown, he, him. I'm in the Charlotte Metro chapter. I've been in INPEC for 6 years now. So excited to have everyone to our first Talking to Non-Socialist training of the new year. And this one's a little dedicated to ICE and immigration. So welcome. At all of our INPEC events and trainings, we like to go over our community agreements. We, feel it is the best way to make sure everyone has a great conversation, stays safe. And, we just have some guide rails for how we're going to do things. So first up, we have respect the discussion and the facilitators. Obviously, let's be camaraderie to each other. Listen actively. We're going to hit that about 100 times tonight. To your comrades when they speak. Listen to the facilitators, especially when we're giving you instructions.
I'm gonna put the
recording stopped.
Sorry, you finished? I was just putting.
Oh, sorry. I was trying to drop them in the chat too.
Oh, you got them. Never mind.
Yeah. So practice good faith. We're all from different places, different experiences, different backgrounds. So practicing good faith is also something that we're going to talk about quite a bit tonight when we're talking to non-socialists. So it's a great way to go ahead and practice that with each other tonight. And then finally, let's make I statements. Let's talk from our experience, how we view things, not generalize or overstate, saying it's DSA's position or our caucus position. Talk about it from ourselves. So, and then the other two things, we also use Stack. So if you aren't familiar and you'd like to say something, you may type Stack in the chat. Also, I think Zoom has some sort of hand raising feature, so we'll be looking out for those as well. And then, also jargon giraffe, or you can put a giraffe emoji or write giraffe. Lastly, I will turn it over. Ed's next to me, so I'll popcorn to Ed as our other facilitators tonight.
Hi, I'm Ed. I've been with NPEC. This is my first term. I'm with the Asheville chapter. I'm on the steering committee there.
Colin's helping out on tech stuff somewhere, but
Oh, right. Sorry.
It's
But it's all
me. I'm the next person. I'm
Oh,
Michaela.
sorry,
I'm
Michaela.
chair. It's okay. I'm the chair of NPEC this year, and I've been on NPEC off and on for about 5 years. I'm in the North New Jersey chapter of DSA, and I see a question. Anybody can be on this call. It's not closed to DSA members. However, if you're not a DSA member, there's going to be, this is about talking to non-socialists from a socialist perspective. So you can adopt those talking points and thinking like however you like, regardless of what country you're in. But our trainings are aimed at members of the organization Democratic Socialists of America. You don't have to be a citizen of the United States in order to be a member of the Democratic Socialists of America. But this is what we do. We're a committee of the organization, which means that we are convention mandated. Convention is the decision-making body of DSA, and we were created in 2019. And we provide a number of avenues for political education in our organization and outside of it, including trainings like this one. We have talking to non-socialists trainings that are kind of more general.
also we have a question of, will this be available as a replay? Since we are recording, we do have a YouTube. It said we were recording at the beginning.
I think that might be somebody's otter.
Oh, okay. Yes, I guess we are recording, so this probably won't be replayed, but we do have other previous trainings like this up on our YouTube and our website that we can drop the links to at the end of the evening, and probably email them out later as well.
Yep. We'll definitely be sharing the slides. I see that they're I'm gonna try something one more time. I'm so sorry, y'all. We received a request to record to the cloud. Is somebody trying to record this? Is this anybody? Guy, are you requesting this?
That was not me.
Okay, I'm actually going to deny it because I think there are too many people on this call, and we should get everyone's consent before they are recorded. But I'm going to stop sharing for just a second because I think there's something weird happening here.
All right. Well, so we came here because we want to talk to non-socialists. Obviously, folks that are movable, we're not going to talk to the same way that I guess we talked to this fascist that was previously trying to record this, our political opponents, in state, county, federal government, billionaires, our friends, family, neighbors, chums, acquaintances. With all those folks, we're going to take a different tenor and talk to those folks different than we would say our adversaries. So, when we're deciding like how to talk to people, we really want to think, if we were talking to someone who is like spewing right-wing propaganda, or are we talking to somebody that's been fooled by it? Obviously, we live in capitalist waters. We went to most likely school where we really like force-fed capitalist propaganda, and all that. So there's a lot of deprogramming, a lot of things that may not be realizing that we are thinking about socialism, but just by the ambience or the ambient kind of atmosphere.
Acknowledge in the chat, maybe raise your hand. It's actually a fairly common phrase in organizing in general. Colin, could you please take care of whatever's going on in the chat? I don't really understand it. Thanks. So with active listening, what you do is basically take these 4 points, which is you want to make sure that you actually are in connection with the person. So this little picture of these 2 pink girls before this, they're facing each other, right? Like they actually have like an engaged conversation, that you are not just trying to get away from them, but you're actually like making contact or connection with them. Then you also are there to absorb. The people on the very outside, they might be just people who are like never going to listen to you. Those are not the people who we're talking about here. People who will never listen to you and people who are trying to antagonize you. We're not necessarily trying to move those people. They're not movable, right? However, if people are kind of like skeptical or on the edge, maybe they're in support of some things, but they're still, a little bit, not all the way in. You can kind of move people closer, and sometimes it takes a couple of conversations. If these are people who are sort of recurrent in your life, like a workmate, a relative, maybe an old friend, a neighbor, then you can always have the opportunity to reprise the conversation later. So here's the big question. Why me? why am I the person who has to, have unpleasant conversations with people I disagree with? Why is it that I'm the person who needs to, kind of risk myself maybe, or like put myself on the line? And the thing is that if somebody is speaking to you in good faith, they're already open to what you have to say. And if you know them, which a lot of times you do, right? These are people who you know, or maybe they want to get to know you better. Maybe there's a little bit of antagonism there. Maybe they know that you disagree with them on certain things. But nonetheless, like if they are coming to you in good faith, if they seem like they're really interested in what you have to say, then you can trust that, at least to the extent that you can have a good conversation with them. Even if they're coming to you with an argumentative kind of posture, you can diffuse that by listening to what they have to say and actually moving the conversation. And even if you need to leave the conversation without getting to full agreement, if you leave them with something to think about, maybe they came in with a kind of perception that you were a certain way, that you thought a certain thing, or that maybe they had, some opinion that you disagreed with, but you were able to have a good conversation, and maybe now they're going to be willing to listen to something new. And because this training is geared towards people who share socialist thinking, just think about it this way. You're a socialist. You have kind of these beliefs that human beings can be the people who transform the world. So the conversations you have with other human beings are potentially transformative. You might not see it happen right in front of your face immediately, but this is what we believe, is that people actually are creative and that they are powerful and that we can actually change things. So why not you, right? Like, why not like take the opportunity? That's why all of the folks are here, besides the ones who are trying to, I guess, dox us or something. You're here because you want to learn kind of some new techniques, maybe practice some things and share with others, like maybe some of your concerns about your own capacities and stuff like that. So I'm just going to move on. Unless anybody has any questions, what we're going to do is wait a couple seconds here. I'm going to stop sharing for just a minute, just so that I can see everyone.
Hey, all right, there it is. Yeah, so we've got to the, ICE and anti-immigration portion of this. So we wanted to go over, some talking points that you're likely to hear while you're out talking to people. And then we kind of want to dissect it and think about, maybe where those come from and, how we can respond. We'll do a little group think as we get ready to go into our practicum role-playing portion. But first up, they need to come here the right way or not at all. They're taking away American jobs. They're freeloading off American taxpayers and welfare. They should stay in their own countries. They don't belong here. They're bringing, violence, drugs, disease, et cetera, et cetera. So if you all want to stack in, we can take a few, but, what could these talking points reflect, besides, a media diet? Maybe like, why do people gravitate towards these and think these things about? I see fear. Denise on stack, fear.
Yeah, sorry. I was just going to say fear as well, but I like some type of insecurity, food insecurity, job insecurity, insecurity.
I've seen fear, gaslighting, propaganda. So yeah, for the other ones, yeah, people are obviously getting, not the truth there. Obviously, we could talk about the widespread, stuff of propaganda, racism, and then a big space racism. The state doesn't take care of them. Needing a straw man to identify why they're struggling while they're living in America. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a big one we can connect to. Of it kind of sucks for most of us here, right? Ignorance, biased media, a good bit of is just genuine racism. All right, so we're hitting racism, fear, kind of an inability to express their own kind of insecurities, especially when it comes to material things. Lack of education. We got some cultural stuff. All right, awesome. I think we got a lot of the reasons. Could anyone maybe stack in about how we could respond to these? Maybe this is from experience. Maybe it's something you've been mulling over. Jeremy, go right ahead.
So I don't think that I don't think that you can actually like just argue directly against any of these. Not because I think that they're true, but I think that people all just bring them evidence, even if you like have a stat sheet with you, and you're like, oh no, well look, like they're taking they only get jobs that like wouldn't pay anybody enough honestly to live, or they need to come here the right way or not at all. Like, well, a lot of them are coming here the right way. People aren't. They already have this idea that they're right, and they have a reason to believe that, whether it's a good reason or not. And so I would say that like maybe the best approach is actually to like go back to like first principles about like just treating other people well, and like what it is to be like kind to each other. And like I guess like I just would not address these directly at all personally.
Yeah, I mean, we talked a little bit before about people's priors, what socialism and the transition to it might mean for people's conceptions of like freedom and material stuff. So yeah, it's certainly hard to break into those schemas like the first time talking about these things, especially in like a material way. Yeah.
Maybe something also is like, instead of responding with facts or responding with some kind of like, well, I don't agree, but maybe a question. Maybe something like, oh, where I've heard something different. Where are you getting your information? Or like, where did you hear that? And do it in a way that does not put them like on the defensive, right? Or you can just say, oh, tell me more. Where'd you hear that? I know it might sound like very off-putting when someone says something like rude, or what we might consider to be rude or inhumane. But if you ask them a question, they might be willing to talk to you and say, oh, I saw it on the news. And instead of saying, oh, which news, you can say, oh, I heard something different. Or for example, or like, up the street from where I work, the immigrants that I know like do laundry, and we can kind of maybe bring in the fact that they're doing jobs that other people are not willing to do, which is actually something that George Bush said, 25 years ago. There are ways to address these things by drawing people out and actively listening, that then might be able to move to something. And that's a really good point from iPhone in the chat. Start with a point they'll likely agree with before moving to points that they need to come back around to, right? Okay, so now we're going to move into these pro-ICE talking points. This is a slightly different one. Obviously, they're very wrapped up in each other. We only separated them out essentially to try to like kind of give some variety. There's these like, they're kind of, some of it's misinformation, but some of it's also just what passes for common sense, right? They're only arresting people with criminal records, or they're protecting us. They're only targeting illegal immigrants. I'm using that phrase not because I think it's okay to say, but because that's the way that people talk about it. They're just doing their jobs or what they're told. This is one that's a big one and has been coming up. They're making mistakes, but that's going to happen. We can just give them more training. And then this one, whoops, this one is, it's ugly or this is unpleasant, but it's necessary if we want to make America great again. So people can jump on Stack or type into the chat. I'd love it if people actually got on Stack and said, but how would you try to move people who say these kinds of things? And we should also note that at this point, about 50% of people who you would not expect, for example, young men ages 18 to 29, rural folks, people, you know, who are kind of in the non-materialist way in which journalists talk about the working class, people without a college degree. These people also think that ICE is going too far currently. However, they might still say some of these things, right? Okay, so I see Denise and I see JP. Go ahead, Denise, and then JP, you're up.
Yeah, what I have said, I love to call my senator. What I have said is that, like, this does not feel safe to me. That's just what I've said.
How do they respond?
My senator is a really awful person, and he said, my family feels safe. So that was gross.
All right. Well, you may not move, that person may not be a movable person. Now you know, the senator of whatever state you're from is not a movable person. So you don't need to bother talking to them anymore. You just need to elect them out. JP, go ahead.
I saw the last bullet point there. It's ugly but necessary if we want to make America great again. I'm sure a lot of us have heard that talking point in regards to Trump's immigration policies, but I always think make America great again is kind of a gift to us because it opens up the obvious question of, oh, when exactly was America great? You know, and then that further opens up a lot of opportunity. Oh, was it when 40% of the workforce was in labor unions? Oh, was it when we had strict quotas? That's what you want to bring back, is strict quotas based on country. That seems, there was a reason we got rid of that. You know, there's a lot of history that's kind of available to you if you want, if they open up like the last 200 years of injustice for scrutiny.
This is true, JP. However, do we think that we can move somebody by throwing statistics at them necessarily? But it depends on the person, of course, right? If somebody really is wanting to get into a historical argument, something you might try for someone who is not maybe prone to that, maybe like your aunt or something like that, you could say, what do you think would make America great? Then you're not putting them necessarily on the spot for not knowing history or something like that. And maybe you can then find some common grounds. If it's something like, I think that everyone should have a job. I think that everyone should be able to afford a house. And you'd be like, I think so too. And that's why I think that these are the remedies, right? And then you can like maybe move somebody to realize that it's not the fault of immigrants that we don't have these things, right? You might even be able to like insert your own socialist or anti-capitalist like kind of like beliefs in there as you're moving someone away from blaming immigrants for something along those lines, right? Because this Make America Great Again line, it really is code for some for just racism, right? For just like racism, for patriarchy, for like whatever they think was great about America. For some people though, it's like, you know, it's when people could afford to buy a house. It's when people weren't like up to their ears in debt. It's for when, you know, people were, you know, wages weren't stagnant for all the reasons that you said. So like, I'm not saying you're incorrect. It's just that depending on the audience, it may be better to kind of like maybe ease them into a conversation about what they think would be great, right? Like what do they think a great America would be like, or a great place to live, really, right? Okay, so I'm seeing some other stacks here. iPhone, I don't know your name, but you are on stack. And then Nelson.
Hi, it's Alyssa. Nice to be here. I found, and I hope that this is relevant, but like when responding to some of those things, sometimes I feel like it's more important than like the content of the response is to like, I found success in trying to adopt the language and almost like the cultural dialect of the people I'm talking to and almost like mirror it back to them. Like I feel like I'm in LA and a lot of my family, like they're MAGA people from Indiana, and but like their ideology, like it really isn't that far off from socialism, and they're very suspicious of like corporations stealing from the little guy, and like so if they were talking about how like one of the examples you said was, oh, like it is like instead of saying like it is messy, but sometimes sacrifices need to be made to make America great again, they would probably say it more like, yeah, like shit's got to happen sometimes. And like that's the price that has to be paid for shit to get better. Then, like, instead of saying like, yeah, but I don't feel comfortable with violence being perpetuated by the state on its citizens. Like, even that, like, sometimes like language that I feel like sometimes I can take for granted is just being like normal words and vocabulary. Sometimes I really think it makes people just tune you out. And so just like instead, like when I like respond to my family, like I've had to learn to be like, no, like totally like when you want big shit to be like different, like sometimes like there needs to be a price. For me personally, I don't know if people getting shot in the streets is something I'm comfortable with. Like sometimes I have to like say it like how they would say it. And then they're like way more down to talk with me.
Yep. I totally hear what you're saying, Alyssa. And actually, both Guy and my father, our families are from the Ozarks. So, like, we have hillbilly like relatives who talk like that
No,
all the
totally. Like
time.
you can't.
Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off there. I was just putting everyone on mute. I think that that kind of goes along with the trying to make sure you're meeting people where they're at, right? If you have the cultural capital or the like cultural ability to do that with a family member, then sorry. If you are able to do that, you should definitely do that, right? Like you should definitely try to make sure that people understand you. Very difficult sometimes if you don't know someone very well to balance that with not infantilizing them, right? You know, like making sure that you're not like, you know, uh making someone feel condescended to. But I do think that's a really, really good point. You want to use language that makes people feel respected, but not talked down to, or not like, you know, they feel like you're jargoning them or what have you. Nelson, you are on stack. So go ahead. And then we have Jill. And if anyone else wants to get on stack, please do it now. Or otherwise, after Jill, we'll close stack and move on.
Hey, comrades. So I'm just looking at the one that's like, oh, they're just doing their jobs. And for me, it's kind of like hard to not be in the men's mindset of like being confrontational, but like probing that thought, be like, okay, so like, what is the limits that you would accept if someone told him to do something like arresting you? Okay, but what if like, you know, their commanding officer said to do something more to you, like, I don't know, break your legs, take your clothes off in public, right? You know, do whatever. Like, at what point, where's your limits to they're just doing their jobs, right? And try to explore like what are the limitations of what they see to be acceptable, like how much depravity they would accept watching people do their quote unquote jobs.
That's a really good point. I think you can sort of take that too and potentially say, you know, you can ask somebody if you know them well, like, you know, like what would you do in this situation? You can say like, you know, okay, so you know, what would you do in this situation? You can also say, you know, I don't, I also don't think that the people who are telling them to do it are right. And you can maybe take that to be an opportunity to say something about how you think of ICE, not just as like the individual officers, but as the system that is, deciding to do this to people, right? So you don't even have to disagree with somebody necessarily. It's like, yeah, they are just doing their jobs, what they're told. They're also being told to do horrible things, right? And you can say, well, you know, my criticism is directed also at their bosses, also at, also at the administration, and that might actually diffuse it a little. But like you said, Nelson, there might also be a way that you can kind of like ask somebody to put themselves in the shoes of, the person who they're defending, and maybe see if that could work. It definitely will depend on who it is, for sure. But you can also bring forward a little bit of political education to your audience by, just saying like, you know, they are just doing their jobs, but this is also a policy that's coming down with the full force of the state. And that's something that I don't think is right. And I think that we should change that. Jill, go ahead, and then we'll close stack after Jill and move on.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. I'm sorry. This is more of a question.
Yeah,
and I don't know if this is going to be brought in because I love these strategies and I'm very familiar with active listening and all of these things. However, the issue that I run into is feeling very dysregulated when somebody says something like this. So I don't know if you're going to approach that at all.
We can talk about it now. We have talked about it in other areas, like whenever, all of the things that we're doing basically is like, how do you talk to somebody about something you really would rather not be talking about, right? Like we're not all running out trying to have unpleasant conversations with people we disagree with all the time. So I would say, if you find yourself in a situation where you're taken by surprise, and we're actually going to do a little role play with me and Ed here in a minute, I would say try to think about like what's the purpose of your conversation, right? Like the purpose of the conversation is try to move someone. If it's somebody who is like trying to antagonize you like actively, then you don't need to argue with them or talk to them. You can just, we're talking about talking to people who are approaching you at some level of good faith, right? Who just have the wrong ideas. It's not like debate club, right? Like just like, you're not like trying to win an argument. So that can help, because then you're just like, okay, is this person approaching me in good faith? Take a breath, and if it helps to think in terms of that 70-30, which is that you don't actually have to say anything right away, right? You can kind of listen to what someone has to say and use that time while you're listening, as you're listening, to focus on, I'm going to try to see if I can move out of this conversation in a way that doesn't alienate my neighbor or doesn't alienate my workmate. If you're really upset, if somebody is like antagonizing you, you can also de-escalate, the conversation and just be like, hey, I'd like to maybe like revisit this topic when we're, both feeling a little bit more ready to approach it. Because I find the reasons I tend to get like upset is because the other person's getting upset, and I don't always have control over that, except that I can extract myself from the conversation and just, say, maybe we can talk about this later whenever we're both feeling a little bit more ready or something like that. But if it's just the things that they're saying, then, and you can't get out of it without kind of like, moving through the conversation, I find that it's helpful just to focus on the active listening. Don't, say much, but then also when you have a chance, try to ask them something or say something that shows your humanity. You can even say to somebody, I don't agree with you, but I really appreciate the fact that you're sharing this with me. And I respect, I respect that. And that way, maybe that person will kind of like realize like this is a two-way conversation potentially, and that you ought to be able to like have a little bit of room to share how you're talking about it. And that could actually be something that helps you ease up on yourself, because a lot of times that dysregulation is like nervousness about like saying the wrong thing or like messing up. And if you just think of it in those ways, like, think I don't have to say exactly the right thing. I can also just listen to this person, ask them questions, and see where it goes. It can be helpful. Hopefully that's how I would do it anyway. Definitely breathing helps. And think of this person as another human being and not just like an adversary, right? They're not your adversary. Adversaries are the capitalists. We're not out here trying to, convert Jeff Bezos or whatever. It's just your neighbor, your workmate or whomever. Madeline also has some good advice here in the chat. So
okay, I was gonna say also, yeah, we talked about this like in the past too. Yeah, and Madeline like brought it up with like grounding, or we brought in like sports psychology, breathing techniques, which were mentioned as well, because obviously it's a psychological but also a physiological. So being like aware of how we might be tensing up, what those triggers are, how we can like ground ourselves, and then as Michaela said, like get back to like being part of the like humanizing conversation that's going on. And we had some of those things that we can share out as later as well too.
Is Colin still on the call? All right, Ed, are you ready to do this?
I'm ready.
All right, so I'm gonna pin us, and now you all are gonna be exposed to an Oscar-winning dialogue. So Ed is going to reprise his role. He's done this before in our Talking to Non-Socialists training of my slightly cantankerous but very charming and talkative neighbor. And I am a socialist who lives next door to him. And he's always out, messing about in his yard. And today he is going to be letting loose with some opinions about immigrants. So, Ed, you remember what we decided that
Yes.
you're going to ask me? Okay, so go ahead.
All right. Hey, Michaela, I see you've been gone all day. Where you been?
Oh, hi, Ed. Thanks for noticing. How are you doing today? I've actually been, I was at work, but then I just went to this rally outside of this ICE facility where they've been detaining people. And, I belong to this political organization called DSA, and we were all out there, expressing our opinions about it. How have you been? What have you been up to?
I've been doing fine, but why would you be doing that? We have limited resources in this country, and people can't be using them up, especially if they don't belong here.
By people, you mean? What do you mean?
People, immigrants.
Okay. So if what I'm hearing you say is you think that immigrants are using up resources, or they're using
like
welfare?
Healthcare, welfare,
Okay. Where'd you hear? Have you been reading up on this? Like where have you been?
Sure,
hearing about?
I read, the posts on Truth Social every day.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, they probably post a lot on there, right?
Oh yeah, more than I can keep up with, really.
Well, what do you think about that? Like maybe you can say a little more about your views. Like they're using our healthcare, like the healthcare that we have in this country for us.
Yeah, I mean, they come here, they don't have jobs, and they need to go to the hospital, they go to the emergency room, they make lines long, they get free health care, those SNAP benefits that we cut, things like that.
Yeah.
I pay taxes for that. I go to work every day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if I'm hearing what you're saying, and it sounds like you're frustrated that like these very minimal welfare resources are flowing towards people who you think don't deserve them. So my understanding is that a lot of they do pay taxes, that the people who work here, even if they are not here on a documented basis, they are paying taxes and paying Social Security, but they're not allowed by law to access welfare. Have you heard about that?
I have, but that's not what our president says. That's not what his administration says. So I don't know where you're getting that from.
Okay, well, I mean, there is a law that says that that people who are here undocumented or who don't have residency or who aren't citizens basically can't use those things. So I don't know, maybe there's room to disagree there, but what I think is actually pretty interesting is that we also don't get health care here. Like in the
Right.
US, like we don't have free health care like as citizens. So I mean, what do you think about that? Like, do you think that's fair?
No, not at all. Not at
Yeah,
all. But I already
yeah.
pay enough in taxes, and I barely have enough to pay for my employer's health care.
I know. It's crazy that we actually have to pay out of pocket for that after we're paying all of this tax. Like that, and that tax flows essentially towards things that we don't see a benefit for. Um, I mean, what would you like to see your tax dollars pay for?
Well, things like they used to when I was young.
Yeah. Like what?
Like, well, when I went to college, it was $1,000.84 a semester.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think that we should work to try to like change the system so that we actually are getting the benefit of our tax dollars. And I know that you and I might not see eye to eye. I don't think that the reason that we don't have those things is because immigrants are taking them. I think that the reason we don't have those things is because we live in a system that just doesn't want to pay for everyone to have adequate health care. You and I might disagree on that, but I just, I think it's important to say that like our suffering is not because of immigrants taking things away from us. Would you
Well,
agree?
I think I need to see more information on that. I'm an engineer. I'm data driven. But
Okay. Well, I actually do have an article I can share with you if you want.
all right, that'd be good. But I also need to understand, if that's the case, then why all this nonsense on True Social?
Yeah, I mean, some people have reasons to not want immigrants here that are based not on any truth necessarily, but on the fact that they just don't really want them here because of ideas about the way America ought to be. I don't happen to agree with that, and I do think that they use a lot of different tactics to try to draw people in and think that immigrants are taking things away from us. And I'm happy to share more information with you at another time. I've got to run inside and
All
grab
right, all right,
dinner, but really nice to talk to you, Ed. And so I'll I'll send you that article over email if you
all
want.
right, all right.
Okay.
Careful at these protests. I don't want to hear you get shot.
Okay, thank you. And that's for a whole other thing. All right, so I'm gonna unpin us. Thank you so much, Ed. One second here. All right, so would folks like to get on Stack and talk about what they heard or what they thought about our little interaction there? Like what you saw happen, some tactics that you might have seen occur. Go ahead and type Stack or raise your hand in the chat if you wanted to.
Maureen, did you have your hand up?
No, she was just using the clappy emoji. Anyone on Stack want to share what they thought about the our little Oscar-winning performance there? Okay, active listening. Andy, maybe say a little bit more about that, because I can't tell if it was a compliment or if it was or if it's a criticism. Go ahead.
Oh no, absolutely a compliment. Like that, your demeanor was like very matter of fact the entire time, you know. So like that then it doesn't bring the other person up, you know, like you took everything and kept the same demeanor and kept the same um I guess level of volume in your voice as you were interacting. And I think that's huge. I think that's very important in those situations. That's something that I am realizing that like maybe I'm not very good at when I feel kind of triggered, you know, from somebody saying something that I absolutely don't agree with. Or
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks. I appreciate that. I also know that like this kind of goes with what Jill was saying earlier, is that it can be hard to like hide any kind of like distress or emotion, because you're like, and then that can end up being an issue. It does help to like kind of like focus on what the person is saying and how you can try to keep them talking, and try to, of course, move them or like find common ground, you know. And like whenever we was talking about healthcare, then I was able to kind of move the conversation towards like, well, do we think that everyone deserves healthcare? And that way I was able to trick Ed the engineer into agreeing with me. Just kidding, wasn't tricking him. Of course he agreed with me. But that way it was able to like, then I was able to tell him like, I don't think that immigrants are the ones who are taking this away from us, right? Sophie and then Daniel.
Hi. One thing that I appreciated was using leading questions instead of like saying like, "Oh, you shouldn't think that." One thing that I've heard a lot is it's impossible to reason people out of beliefs that they didn't necessarily reason themselves into, and kind of questioning to let them trip up rather than trying to correct them, I think is a great strategy.
Yeah, thanks. I think that is so, it's sometimes hard to remember to have phrase what you want to say in the form of a question. And of course, you don't want to do it in an awkward, like Jeopardy kind of way, right? Like where it's like, that wasn't really a question. But I think that leaving them kind of open-ended and just being like, what do you think about this? You know, what would you agree? You know, like, how do you feel? Like, kind of things like it does kind of help you ground yourself as well, and keeps you in the mindset of the active listener. Daniel.
Hi, can you hear me real quick?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, so I apologize. I came in a little late, but my thing is what about that performance is just that the guy was a little too courteous and agreeing. I talked to some of these Trump supporters before. They're stubborn as nails, and they've agreed with healthcare before, but then they just go right back to hating immigrants. So my question is basically, what do you do to those who just won't listen to belittle? Like they'll say like, "Oh yeah, I agree with you one day," but then they'll just like throw people under the bus the next time. So what do you do about that?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't know if
that's
you already answered that before, man. I'm sorry.
no, no. That's like a really great question. The way I would answer that is that you just this is my neighbor, and like I have to live with him basically. Like it's, you know, I he lives next door to me until Ed moves, or you know, God forbid, until something happens to Ed or me. I gotta run into him. So like one of the things that we're talking about earlier, and like this, I don't know if you are a DSA member, if you identify as a socialist, but you know, we're socialists. We believe in the power of humans and human creativity and intelligence, right? We live in a moment right now where that is extremely hard, very, very hard. But socialists believe that human beings are powerful, right? And if but like at the end of that conversation, Ed is like, you know, runs back in, checks Truth Social, been like, oh, my confirmation bias is now in full swing, you know, able to like kind of do that. I don't have any control over that. I only have control over the interaction. And maybe I can send him this article that will give him a little bit more information. And so the next time he has a conversation with me or with someone else, at least he has that. Now, to the extent that I cannot control Ed, I can also, you know, make sure that Ed always knows that I'm not a problem, right? That I'm not a threat. Right. And that's good because you want Ed to keep trusting you. Ed is just the stand in for like every other person in our lives who is like this, right? It's not the same. Ed's not the same as the, whenever you go to a protest and you're counter protesting a right wing, you know, group or something like that. That's not the time for this. This is kind of more about like, how do we move people who we may even care about. Like I probably care about Ed. I do care about Ed. He's my comrade. But like, you know, in this kind of like thing, Ed's my neighbor, you know, like we care about our neighbors. Socialists care about our neighbors, at least to the extent that we would like to be able to count on them or rely upon them. And so this is also about forming connections with people through respect and compassion. And you just kind of have to hope that the respect and compassion that you show to people may eventually, maybe not right away, but may eventually have an effect. Does that help, Daniel, answer your question? I know it's like a huge thing to tackle, but I hope that was helpful.
It does. Thank you.
All right, Jessica.
Hi. So one thing I noticed that you did when you were having your interaction is that he kind of started on a generalization of all the things he didn't like, and you kind of focused it in on one specific issue of healthcare. So you kind of like you were listening to everything, and then you kind of led the conversation to that one specific talking point that you know maybe you had a lot of knowledge on, or you had just read something recently about. So I think that was a good way to lead the conversation so it wasn't so broad. And also, you know, kind of you got him to, you know, somewhat agree. And also you got to get out of the conversation and get your dinner and stuff. So it kind of like shortens it and it kind of just guides the conversation overall.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing too, is that you are trying to steer the conversation into a productive channel, right? Instead of just letting Ed, beloved neighbor Ed, rant all night about immigrants, right? Like this is not necessarily what we're here for, right? Like we're here to create a connection, to find common ground with our neighbors, and to try to put them into a mindset where our beliefs could be more acceptable to them. Now, if he starts, you know, kind of talking about this, you know, maybe it's not the case that he's going to immediately be a convert to, you know, kind of a full anti, you know, kind of ICE or, you know, whatever, like protest movement guy. But we did just find a moment to talk about healthcare, and then maybe I can inform him on the reasons why our healthcare is so scarce in this country, and that it's not to do with immigrants. And that way, because he's an intelligent, creative person, he can kind of also steer himself after I'm gone, right? We need to plant the seeds for people to be able to do what they need to do, right? Like to be able to like use their reason. Ed, go ahead.
And obviously we made a connection because I told her I didn't want you to get shot. Protest, so.
Exactly. He cares about me. He does not want me to get shot at a protest. So sorry, there was like a weird thing that just happened. What we'll do is we'll send you like what we had planned. And then there's also like a very kind of like step-by-step guide to an organizing conversation. Now, just to like be clear, an organizing conversation is when you are going up to someone, right? Like when you're trying to like get somebody to do something like maybe sign a petition at minimum, or maybe even join a union, or maybe join DSA, whatever, you know, like this is like something you're doing proactively. the conversations we've been talking about today have been like the ones that you don't necessarily have control over. However, there is a lot of overlapping like tips and tricks with an proactive organizing conversation and the kinds of things that we've been talking about today. I think that we can just open it up for like general comments and questions. If folks want to. Is that all right, Guy?
Yeah, I was gonna say, speaking of like, yeah, there may not be hard organizing ask like you just said, but sometimes these conversations might have an ask of if they're receptive, like, hey, can we talk again soon? Or can I send you an article or something like that, kind of what, you know, in the example. So the ask might not be something concrete like joining or signing up, but just to continue the conversation at another time. And that's how we keep moving people into the bullseye.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so Carolyn and then Jessica, and if anyone else wants to jump on Stack, we'll probably be ending here in another 10 to 15 minutes.
Thank you. I was really interested in your conversation, but then afterwards you talked about how when somebody says something about like healthcare and it's not the immigrants' fault. I'm new to DSA, and so I'm not confident in being able to describe what the socialist view is on those things. So what are your recommendations in that, like not just healthcare? That's the reason I joined, basically, and that along with campaign reform, campaign finance reform. But what's the best way to kind of encapsulate those views that I can become more confident in explaining it?
Yeah, so I mean, welcome to DSA, by the way. But then also, like, I mean, the belief that I have is that the reason why healthcare is scarce in this country is because we have underfunded any kind of like social aspects to healthcare. There's obviously other environmental reasons as well as like, you know, food system reasons. There's like all kinds of sort of reasons why health is bad and expensive in this country, but it's primarily to do with the fact that it's private, right? That it's a for-profit business, and it shouldn't be, right? That it should be for everyone. Other countries have this. You don't even have to be like on the left side of DSA. You can be kind of like more of a social democrat or whatever to realize that healthcare is one of those things that we suffer because it's private, and it's scarce because it's private. It certainly isn't because immigrants are taking away some socialized healthcare that we don't have access to, right? And that's the thing, is that the idea that our tax money is flowing towards immigrants is not only factually incorrect, it's also structurally incorrect, right? Because our tax money is not flowing towards much of anything that is of great benefit to anyone, including funding or fully funding like a sane healthcare system. So I would just, you know, kind of think about how you would put it in your own words, and think about like the things that you believe, and talk about those. You know, if you know that you want Medicare for all, you can talk about that.
Right.
So I think
Okay.
that's also kind of the thing. You speak from where you're coming from. You may not feel the most developed, but like as long as you're finding common ground with someone and say, well, what I think is that we should have Medicare for all. Like everybody deserves healthcare. I think it should be a human right. And then see what happens. You know, someone might say, you know, like, oh, I think that too. What about illegal immigrants? Sorry to use that phrase. You know, and you can say, I actually think that they should also have healthcare, because it should be anyone who gets sick in this country. You could even, I might say, whenever I've gotten sick in another country, it didn't matter that I wasn't a citizen. I got healthcare
Right.
because that's the way other countries
Right.
work. Right?
And I guess the thing that it happens to me is people will be complaining about something, like especially about healthcare, like it cost me $40 to just get physical therapy one time, blah blah. And I want to go, well, you should be a socialist. You know, I like jump that far, or instead of just saying, yeah, wouldn't it be great if we all had free healthcare? And
Yeah.
then just kind of trying to get that. I'm not sure how much that helps, though. I guess that's my my question is to just say it. Is that enough?
I think that
To,
you want to continue the conversation, right? And like the way you want to end a conversation is with amity, right? Like you want to like have a sense of, I left this conversation with someone feeling good about me, and someone feeling good about the conversation we had. You
Right.
may, depending on how close the person is to your beliefs, because you can also have these conversations with people who are much closer to your beliefs than
Right.
Ed was, right?
Mhm.
You might end up having like, you know, inviting them to something, maybe like being like, oh, DSA is having this, like my chapter is having a social. Do you want to meet more people who are kind of like thinking the same way? There's a lot of ways it can go. You just have to be, that's the thing about active listening, is that you can figure out where someone sits on the bullseye, right? Like
Right.
where they are is due to the things they say and the things they express. And if they feel comfortable saying them to you, you're able to actually gauge like what you think would be a good ask for them.
Right. I think it's the jump to socialism is the problem from my liberal friends, you know, they're just afraid. So thank you. I'll stop.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you so much, Carolyn. Jessica, go ahead. Oh, wait, we also have Jeremy. We'll go Jeremy and then Jessica.
Yeah. So I mean, Cara, I just wanted to kind of address what Carolyn was saying, that like it seems that like she's really excited about socialism. And sure, why shouldn't we be? But you don't have to represent socialism. Nobody asked you to. And you can just like talk about exactly what Michaela was saying, like the parts of it that like are attractive, like they're gonna be attractive regardless of like whether you label it that, and people will realize like who's pushing for those ideas, and they'll start looking for groups maybe that are actually saying the right things. So I don't think that you have to feel the weight of like representing socialism well. I think that you just have to uh you know exactly what Michaela was saying. Just talk about the actual issue and like how you want to approach it.
Yeah, I think I hear what you're saying. My sense is that because if people know you're a socialist, you do want to represent your beliefs well. And you don't want to necessarily hide your beliefs from them. It is a tricky balance because you're still an individual who has real beliefs. You don't want to make it sound like you're just there to be an emissary for some group that they don't know. That'll make them not trust you, right? So that's why that I conversation is so important. Jessica, you have the last point, and then we'll wrap up.
I had more of a, I guess, question. It may be a bit much for the last question, but I'll ask it. In the interaction, when Ed said I saw it on Truth Social and the president said it, that's something I've kind of seen a bit, and it's just hard because we're not necessarily in a new stage in terms of like bad things that this country's doing, but more so from the president and so-called reliable sources, that things that we're supposed to be able to depend on are operating very maliciously and very sneakily, and presenting things as like accurate.
They're lying.
And they're lying.
Yeah.
How has anybody, I don't know, had an experience with that, like trying to combat it from that angle? Just because it's kind of hard for people who are earnestly, thinking it's the president of the United States. Why wouldn't I believe them? Or, why would they tell me something wrong?
Does anyone want to jump in? I've been talking a lot, so.
I could.
Yeah,
I think it's like a broader conversation about why it's effective for an authority figure to try to make it so nobody trusts anybody else except them. Because that's really what's happened. That's why don't. It's so that the only person that you can then believe is the person that's telling you not to trust everybody else.
Please keep priority seating available. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I mean, one thing that I'm hearing is that it's just hard to fight back against this relentless barrage of truth social, right? Like, or like, you know, there's just people who are, yeah, they're also like addicted to this stuff, right? Like where it's just a constant stream. I mean, one thing that you can do is work on getting people to trust you. You know, like if you're kind of like, you know, I'm seeing Ed every now and again. I'm using, you know, Ed's my neighbor, but we could be talking about anyone, right? We could be talking about a family member, and you care about your family members. You at least care about your family members enough too, where you don't want your conversations with them to be conflictual all the time. So it's like, you know, you're also kind of like trying to move people to a point where it's not antagonistic. And that can actually be an opening, right? Where if somebody trusts you and feels like, okay, if I have a conversation with Michaela, it's not going to be one where it's like she's jumping down my throat, you know, like, or what have you. And that way, maybe like you can get people to soften up. And whenever you do say something like, yeah, like here's my concern, or like here's what I think about this, and they're like, well, that's not what the president says. And you can then say, well, I'm your daughter, I'm your, you know, I'm, you know, like you can kind of like, you don't have to say that outright, but like they could trust what you say as well. It is hard. We're not the press, right? Like we're just people, but if people feel that you're coming to them with good faith information, they may be more willing to kind of read it, you know, like or listen to it. If you're like, you know, this is something that I read that I think, you know, could give you something to think about, or something like that. I think that right now a lot of people are feeling like a sunk cost with this administration, right? People who voted for Trump are not feeling the benefits that they said would flow, right? Especially with the economy. And so now is a really important time for us to be bold in our ability to, you know, have these uncomfortable conversations with people in a forthright and compassionate way. It's tough, hard, but sometimes it's worth it. You know, like, you know, you can actually have a conversation with someone and they really are like, they remember it. You know, they you get them to think something different. And that's why we're doing this, right? Thanks for bearing with us. We did not realize we were going to have quite this number of people like on the call. It really did resonate with a lot of folks to have like a conversation about this in particular. So as I said, what we're going to do is send out a bunch of stuff like over email. So like I'm going to send out an email like right after this call that has like some of the handouts. It also will have a link if you want to sign up to our next, like any future trainings. We're having one in a little while called the Digital Deep Dive. It's a little bit more for like people who are in DSA who like need to like handle their Google Drives in their chapter, or like, you know, like organize themselves. But it's also a little bit about being a socialist on the internet. Since we did just have like a weird little apparent run-in. I don't know if these people are still streaming us. If you are, hope you're having a great night, whatever. But like being a socialist on the internet is complicated. So we're gonna like have some political education about that.
And we're just gonna bounce. We're just gonna bounce. We're just gonna bounce. That's what we're gonna do. We are just going to bounce because, you know, I may have gotten away with something tonight. Did you guys know that after they figured out that I was recording them, they were scrambling on the back end to try to figure out who I was? Because, fun fact, I have multiple different identities all over the internet. I was signed up for that meeting under 3 different names. They have no effing clue what identity I'm signed in under at any given time. And the thing of it is they were trying to figure it out, though. At one point, they went through the entire room and they tried to make everyone turn on their camera and turn on their microphone. And so I know that because I got a notification where they were like, will you please turn on your camera? And I was like, nope. I was like, no socialists, no socialists. I believe in security culture. I don't know why the socialists are trying to surveil me. I don't know why the socialists are engaging in surveillance. I mean, certainly as a very dedicated socialist as I am, because of course I'm signing into their meetings, I would never engage in surveillance culture, Stacy. Do you think we don't study you guys? Turning on my camera. That's not going to happen. And Stacy, just so you know, now I will be implementing tactics that we have because we've had this happen before where people have tried to get me to turn on my camera. We have a way around that as well, Stacy. Don't worry about it. We're going to win. You're going to lose. Again, another W presentation. I have to say, it kind of felt like, yeah, I mean, listen, I feel like I gave the socialists a gift tonight. I delivered them several hundred people that are not socialists that they could have practiced on. They literally had a captive audience of non-socialists. The irony of irony is that they try to prevent all the non-socialists from watching their meeting, and their meeting was entirely about how to talk to non-socialists. And it's like, you know, socialists, I can't take you seriously. I can't take you seriously when you literally schedule a presentation about how to talk to non-socialists. I deliver you like hundreds of non-socialists on a silver platter in the form of my supporters that are funding my work. Because you guys see they were in the chat. They're like, she only has 150 people watching her. That's because it's a supporter exclusive socialist. This wasn't going out to my mass audience yet. I delivered them. And by the way, I have way more than 150 supporters. Obviously, I have thousands of supporters, just for the record. But that you know, I can't control who shows up. Hey, W Tagoro, appreciate that, bro. So I find it really ironic that I literally delivered them a treasure trove of non-socialists that we were all actively listening. I was the least disruptive person on that entire call. I didn't say anything. I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything in their chat. I didn't do anything. I didn't ask questions. I didn't try to stump them. I didn't try to destroy their fucking meeting. We were literally just sitting here listening to them. And so, like, the irony of irony is in a meeting where they're talking about active listening, they have a whole bunch of non-socialists actively listening to everything that they're saying. You know, and this is the thing too. They think that I want to dox them. Honey, I know who you guys are. I've been streaming you guys for years. I have literally been recording the DSA for years. For years, DSA. For years, I have recorded you guys. Years. You think this was about doxing you? I know who you are already. No, the point is, and this is again rather ironic, in that they're trying to reach out to non-socialists. Of all the non-socialists they could have encountered on the internet, I'm probably the one that's most inclined to listen to them. Of all the non-socialists that they could have encountered on the internet, my audience is primed to listen to every word that they have to say. And most ironically, if they were actually interested in having a real and nuanced and calm conversation about what is going on in the world, I would probably be like one of the very best non-socialist people to talk to, because they think they understand what I believe. They have no fucking clue what I believe. They have no clue. But I would listen to them and I would answer all their points. And no, I wouldn't do like Ed did and be like, I really hope you don't get shot at a protest. Like, you know, obviously I don't want anyone to get shot, but it's just like, I don't even go on True Social. And am I going to be like, well, Trump said on True Social this, that, and the other. No. I'm not going to say that shit. I don't even go on. I didn't even vote for Trump. He's not far right enough for me, socialists. So that was great. Massive W me, massive L Stacy again. And that's just going to be the way it is, because Stacy, you don't know any of my secret names. You don't know any of my secret names. And Stacy, if you figure out one of my secret names, which you are never going to do, I will simply use a different one because I have many, many multiple backup identities on the internet. I've been doing this a long time, Stacy. There ain't shit you can do to stop me. Did you notice that we completely derailed their entire meeting because they were so frazzled at the idea that a group of non-socialists might be actually listening to what they have to say? They had no clue what to do. They were frazzled for like the entire first half of that meeting. They didn't even do the break. They were supposed to do half an hour worth of breakout rooms. Also, massive W in no breakout rooms. I fucking hate breakout rooms. I wish people would stop using breakout rooms in Zoom. They're stupid. They're never a productive conversation at all. It's like a horrible teaching approach. And also, that probably would have outed me. If they had put us in breakout rooms, I probably would have had to bail because that probably would have outed me. But luckily, I was just going to get everything up until the breakout rooms, and then we frazzled them so badly that they completely blew the schedule of their own fucking training. So we didn't have to do breakout rooms. I think that was a massive W overall. Now, for everyone that's new, for everyone that this is your first spy stream, was it worth it? Was it worth $5 a month of a channel membership or $8 or however much it was? Was it worth $5? Was it? I paid $7 for a cup of coffee at Dunkin' Donuts today. One in the chat if it was worth it. One in the chat if just this singular spy stream experience was worth the price of admission for this and all future spy streams. Yeah. Gonna see some ones. Gonna see some ones there. What kind of coffee? A protein latte, sugar-free vanilla concoction. Yup. See, that is the power of spy stream, guys. That is the power of spy stream. So, if you were gifted a channel membership, and that's how you got here today, I hope that you will pay it forward and gift a channel membership out to some other people in the community so that we can bring more people in. Because no matter how much that little bitch tries to sabotage me, it's only making me more powerful and it's only making me more money. And Stacy, I gotta say, it's way more entertaining, girl. It's way more entertaining for us when you try to out me and then fail colossally. You're trying to get them to shut down their meetings. They're not shutting down their meetings. I'm still getting all the footage, except now it's far more fun for me because we all get to laugh at the fact, Stacy, that you keep failing entirely to out me to them because you have no fucking clue what names I'm signed on under Zoom. And it could be one of 3 current different names that I'm using. And Stacy, I have more identities. I can make a new fucking identity literally at any time, Stacy, and there ain't shit you can fucking do about it. That was fun.